humans have destroyed much of their world. The annihilation of their species was quick and almost painless. A few nuclear bombs did what was inevitable. This, however, left Earth in a power vacuum, and life forms started to be more intelligent to fill the niches that humans previously occupied. It took millions of years of ruthless cross-species fighting before the dust settled and the winner was found. Many of the best players in this game were invertebrates, such as spiders and crickets, but one stood above them all: ants. Their already evolved ability to speak gave them the upper hand, or rather, antennae. To help accommodate this development, the previously three classes of ants, workers, fighters and queens, diverged into other professions, such as thinkers, farmers, and to our story most importantly, messengers. Their main task was to coordinate the colony and help with the distribution of information. However, in the last 1,000 years, entire empires consisting of ants rose up, and they learned to send these messengers to keep them at peace, which sometimes worked. This Conlang is an exploration of the inner workings of the messenger's speech. The fictional ant species that arose from the ashes of the old world doesn't speak a language that would be familiar to humans whatsoever. They communicate using a variety of pheromones, which they combine into so-called pheromone bursts that they can read. Each of these bursts is a ratio between the different pheromone types. They act quite like sentences would act in human languages. Ants do not use verbs in their language. Instead, they use something called clauses, which are basically different patterns of sentences that they can put words in. Each of these patterns has a specific pheromone or a mixture of them that is associated with them, kind of like an elaborate fill-in-the-blank game. But to fill in these blanks, you have to have nouns, which the ants have, kinda. They use pheromones for that also, but a different type. Historically, the more grammatical pheromone types evolved from the trail pheromones, as the ants used to use them almost everywhere. Most of the other ants are able to communicate by using them, even the ones that are not messengers. The nouns of their pheromones became relevant much more later, when the ants needed to share more specific information. So the messengers came to the rescue. Their reproductive organs changed to sort of a chemical pheromone factory from which they produce these noun pheromones. So these messengers are, in a strange twist of events, the ones that are non-binary, genderless even. Their reproductory organs changed into the chemical factories. That's why there are two types of pheromones: the grammar-based trail pheromones and the elaborate noun sexual pheromones. Each of these sexual pheromones has a different meaning, as human words do, even though their meanings are usually much broader. One pheromone can have up to 16 different meanings in different contexts, but that's because they cannot produce as many pheromone types as humans can produce words. I also need to mention what are the topic, comment, object and modifier roles of these sexual pheromones. Very simply, they are the equivalent of the subject, object, indirect object and other roles in human languages. Each pheromone belongs to a sort of animacy hierarchy that determines their role. The topic acts like the subject of the sentence. It is the only one that does not need to follow the hierarchy, because the thing differentiating the topic pheromone from the others is its relative intensity. The comment, object and modifier pheromones are much less important, so the ants use just the hierarchy for them. With just this information, we can create a simple sentence like "ants are good," written as this. Literally, ant is good. The things before the curly brackets are the grammatical pheromones, and the things inside the curly brackets are the sexual pheromones, with their position corresponding to their rank. First is the topic, then the comment, and so on. I haven't shown you the chemical formulas yet, because they fill the screen very quickly and orientation in them can be rather confusing, but if you want to see them, wait until the end of the video. But what if you want to add some other features to the sentence, like modality or even evidentiality? Could you do that in this language? Well, yes, you can, with other pheromones, of course. These pheromones act as the most human-like part of the language, because their English equivalent is mostly just adding in a word, with an asterisk, of course. These clausal specifiers, which is their name, can be in two states, either high intensity or low intensity, which affect their meaning, or at least most of them. So, for example, if you have the probability clausal specifier, with high intensity, it means something along the lines of maybe or probably, while the same specifier with higher intensity means certainly or almost certainly. If we change our last sentence then, from ends are good to ends are probably good, we do it like this. Notice the minus next to the probability. It signifies that the probability specifier is of a low intensity. There are even specifiers that are used to change the relative order of the object, comment, and modifier. They are shown on the screen for anybody interested. The last grammatical feature that I want to showcase, before I show you how one uses this in practice, are the relative markers. There are some other nuances that we will need to mention, but I'll show them in the process. Relative markers function perhaps the closest to variables in programming languages, but they are just temporary. You can make a clause, like the ends are good example that I showed you earlier. If you want to use one of the pheromones in the last sentence, in the next sentence, without repeating yourself, you need to use these relative markers. Essentially what they do is refer to a thing that you said in your previous clause, or any of the three last clauses. So for example, if I need to say ends are probably good is true, I'd say it like this. There are two sentences. Ends are probably good and last clause is true. So if we combine them, we get the result. The prox.cl is the proximate clause or relative marker. What does that mean? Well, we already know what relative markers are. The clausal part says that we want to refer to the whole clause. There are also topic relative markers, object relative markers, and so on. And the proximate thing states that the clause that we want to refer to is the last clause before the one that we want to say now. If we needed to refer to the second to last clause, we would use the medial, and if we wanted to refer to the third to last clause, we'd use the distal. Well, now onto the sentence. Since this is a ConJam submission, I'll translate the mandatory "if we work together, we can make languages in harmony." This one sentence has to be split into 4 different parts. Firstly, we need to say "if we work together," or as N said, "if we work with we." And then we need to say "we can create speech." Then we need to say the word harmony. Yes, I'll show you how to combine pheromones into new complex words. And after that, we need to say "we can create speech in harmony," combining the 2 clauses together. To start off with the first one, if we work with we, the clause type is quite obvious. We need to use the work clause. Then we need to add the conditional clausal specifier that adds the if, and after that we need to add the reflexive specifier that states that the topic does a thing to itself. So we work with we work with ourselves. And to say the word we as the topic, which is the only word we need, the ends don't use any pheromones at all. Just the lack of the topic says that the topic is we. It's kind of like a pro-drop language, you drop the pronoun. And since we is the most common word in the language, it is the one omitted the most. We can create speech is also quite simple, so I'll just speed through the process. We use the creation clause type and then add the ability specifier. Note that the ability specifier does not differentiate between high and low intensity. And then how do we say harmony? To combine multiple words into one whole, we just say the words without any clausal pheromone, so the part before the curly brackets will be empty. Imagine this as a noun getting modified by adjectives, so the word harmony is literally together and work. To use the word in the next sentence, we need to use the relative marker. We don't refer to these empty clauses as clauses, but rather just as topics. That is one of the irregularities of this language. And for the last clause, we use the proximity clause type that functions as topic near comment or topic in comment. And we need to use the distal clause marker as the topic and the medial clause marker as the comment. With all that said, here is the humanly readable version of the sentence "if we work together, we can create speech in harmony in and." Now I promised to show you the pheromones at work. Each of these colors shown on the screen correspond with the part of speech that they're next to and the chemical that is next to that. Each of the sentences I already mentioned is just a mixture of these chemicals. I'm showing 2 colors because I want to better illustrate how the ratios work. They should be showing up on the screen right now. If you're watching this video up to some 2 weeks after it has been published, you can rate this Conlang in the ConJam. For those that don't know, ConJam is a Conlang ranking marathon that lasts 2 weeks. You have to make a Conlang with a certain theme. The theme this season was harmony. Then other people get to rate your Conlang to the next 2 weeks after, or however we decide to make the rating system. If you want to learn more about the ConJam and or rate other people's creations, you can watch the video I made about it, or join us at the Discord server. Links in the usual places. Well, that's all from me and the ends, so goodbye!